So, you want to learn the terminal. Maybe the whole scary monsters in the dark thing isn't for you.
Jesus Christ, dude, behind you!
Or maybe you're tired of this happening.
Dude, get out!
Either way, in this guide I'll show you everything you need to know about the terminal, all the way from the basic beginner stuff for people just learning it, up to some more advanced things that you need to know for the harder moons. Fair warning, the terminal player makes or breaks most of your runs, so try to take in as much as you can, and there will be timestamps if you're looking for anything specific. So first up, if you're a complete beginner, I'll just show you the two basic uses of the terminal, but this guide's mostly going to be about the cameras. So the main two commands you're going to use on here is the moons, which just shows you all the moons and their weather. It's not a bad idea to check this after each run because the weather changes throughout the same quota. So one day you can go to March and it'll be stormy, and then next day it'll be perfectly fine. You can just select the moon by typing in its name or just most of it. So like if I type in Mar, it'll do March, and then I can use C to confirm or D to deny. The other main use of the terminal is the store, which you can just view all the items you can buy and see what's on sale here. So here I can just type in what I want with the amount. So let's say I wanted 2 walkies, I would type in walkie 2. I'm broke so it won't work, but that would buy 2 walkies, and I would just write C to confirm that. Every time you re-hop on the terminal, you don't have to type in store or moons every time. If I know I want to buy walkie-talkies, I can just type in walkie from here and I'm broke again, but it would know that I'm just trying to buy walkies. Same thing goes for moons. So if you're on quota day, you always want to go to the company, so you can just hop on the terminal, type in company, and then it'll route you to there, and then you can just confirm that. Also, while I was making this video, version 45 came out and they added the signal translator, which seems pretty cool, but honestly... Wait, are you guys seeing that? Are you guys seeing this? That's it for the basics of the terminal. Once you actually get to a moon, your camera will turn on. You can cycle through your cams here, but you'll honestly never use this monitor. The first thing I like to do is hop on the terminal and type in view monitor. This just puts your monitor on your terminal, which is way better because you can freely type around in here. I could even, if I wanted to, just like go to the store and use my scroll wheel and just look through if you wanted. Pro tip, normally to switch between players on here, you have to type in the word switch and that'll work. But you can also just copy paste the word switch, so I can just put that a bunch of times and I could switch between a whole like modded lobby of 50 people really fast with that. You can also switch to a specific player if you want to. So like mine, if I just typed in probably that would switch to my name. You'll see me doing that a lot later. Now let's get to some gameplay of my teammates in the building. Teammates just entered the facility. You see those green triangles is all the pieces of loot, so you can guide your teammates towards that. And the entrance room is pretty obvious. It's got that big blue rectangle. That's the big main door. You can also find fire exits which look similar, but they're gonna be a lot smaller. You can see these red circles are all enemies, and those small red lines are vents. Those are where enemies can spawn from. So you can see over there D6 and F2. Since I have the terminal pulled up, oh, that guy just got eaten by a slime. So you can see over there D6 and F2. If I try to type that in, it actually won't work. It says special code, but nothing happens. So, oh my god, he chucked this bot. So that means there's no power. There's breaker boxes, and there's a random chance that a breaker can be off, so that whole area, F2 won't work either. I can't affect the doors because the power is off. So right now, in this room, that small green circle, that's the breaker box. I don't have a radio, but if I did, I would tell them to turn on the power, and then like this door right here, I would be able to switch it and try that monster over there. But right now, I don't have a radio. I just kind of went in to look at the terminal and everything because just wanted to show you real quick. Usually you want at least one person to have a radio so you can guide them around the facility and protect them from monsters and turrets. But even without radios, you can still put in a lot of work from the terminal and guide your team on the right path. You can kind of slam doors and do other things to guide your team without walkies. Now is probably a good time to tell you that being the one person on the ship means your #1 priority is to stay alive. If everyone in the crew dies, you lose all the scrap you had stored up. You can usually tell if someone's dead on the terminal if they haven't moved for a long time and everything around them is kind of dark. Also, if you see this, it means your teammate fell into a death pit. If you notice everyone's dead, it's usually best to just leave. Sometimes you can risk extra loot if your teammates died right outside or something, but the risk is usually not worth it. Once it hits about 4 o'clock, dogs will start spawning. You can't see the time when you're in the ship, so occasionally just take a peek outside to check the time. Dogs are the only real threat to you in the ship. And Ghost Girl, I guess. But like, bro, if she's in the ship, you're about as clapped as her hairline, man.
But what the hell, boy?
Anyways, to counter dogs, just be quiet when you hear their growls outside, but you don't have to go fully silent. There's honestly a pretty generous window for how much they can hear before they charge. You can even just get away with quietly talking over your radio. They make a pretty obvious noise when they actually get aggroed and they're gonna come check out the ship. If you just hear small noises outside, usually you can still talk and you'll be okay. But if you hear them actually roar, then they'll charge into the ship wherever they heard you. So as long as you just move away from the spot you were talking and crouch in the corner, they'll just go over, find nothing, and then they'll leave. If you really need to talk and the dogs are really close outside though, you can also just go over and close the door. Be careful though, because the doors only stay closed for a limited amount of time. So just make sure you're not yapping too loud when the doors are open. Also, it seems like dogs will never just randomly walk in the ship. The only time they actually go in the ship is if they hear something. And whenever a dog does end up in the ship, it'll automatically walk out as long as it doesn't hear anything. Your other monitor also has a camera pointed outside the door so you can see what's going on outside and maybe warn your team if there's giants or something outside. Now on to actually guiding your team and what you should be doing, and then I'll show you what to do when monsters start showing up. So first off, there's a lot of different rooms inside, but most important is that these are stair rooms and these with the metal sticking out are jumps. You can usually see before your teammate jumps if it leads to a dead end and stop them from wasting time. Stairs can be weird because you can't see different floors unless whoever you're watching is on that floor, but if there's a turret or a mine on the stairs, you'll see it, but its code won't appear sometimes. So be careful with stairs. If your teammate sprints up the stairs, you have enough time to disable the turret before it shoots, but you gotta be quick. With your radio in your hand, you can talk to your team on the terminal just by holding down left click. You'll hear its little beep. You want to be telling teammates where to go and map out the facility in your head. Guide them to the green triangles and then back to exits, and save them from wasting time, going to dead ends, and walking in circles. Open up doors that are in their way and just keep doors that lead to dead ends closed. Also, if you see a lot of red circles in an area, sometimes it's best to just tell your team to stay away, especially on mansions, but I'll talk more about mansions later. Honestly, guiding your team is as simple as that, so let's move on to how to protect them. Now there's 3 threats to your team in the building. Turrets,
Get out!
mines, it's a mine, careful bro, careful! And the most dangerous are the monsters. Let's go over turrets and mines first, since they're the easiest to deal with. You just type in the code on them to disable them for a few seconds, but there's no way to permanently disable them, even if the power's off. After a turret or a mine goes back online, there's a little grace period where you can't hack it. You can see this from its bars slowly filling back up. Don't worry though, if you have the code already typed and you hit enter right as the grace period ends, you can keep a turret down forever without it getting a chance to shoot. You can also tell where turrets are looking and see when they lock on. Also, if your teammate stepped on a mine, as long as they don't step off, it doesn't blow up, so you can disable it and they can step off. As long as you're paying attention, your team will never die to turrets and mines. And actually, in the clip from earlier, careful! I should have been on the terminal and I would have been able to hack it before it blew up. But now let's talk about the real team killers, the monsters. A lot of the time there's nothing you can do to directly stop the monsters, but I'll show ways you can counter them and what you can do to help your team survive. So the main tool you have against monsters is the secure doors. They spawn completely randomly through the building, so they can be unpredictable. Something to know is that a lot of the time multiple doors share the same code, so watch out for that. The first thing you can do to help your team is to close off rooms with vents in them, because vents eventually spawn monsters as the day goes on. There's lots of times where there's just a dead end with a vent, and if you see these, just leave them closed off. It'll reduce the amount of enemies your team has to deal with. There is a cap to how many monsters can be in the building, so having spawned monsters be trapped makes the rest of the facility a lot safer. Even if you seal as many spawns as you can though, your team will always run into monsters eventually. So let's go over how to tell monsters based off their dot. I'll just be going over the most important one. First up is the slime. You saw it earlier, it's the huge red dot and it moves really slowly. They're really not that big of a threat. They can easily be stopped just by putting a door in between you and your teammates. You don't even have to put a secure door, just a regular door will trap slimes. The small size circle that moves really fast and just aimlessly wanders is a Thumper. Tell your team to steer clear. If you don't have a guy who knows how to kill them, they'll wipe your whole team. Pre-sealed doors to block line of sight with these guys, because I've learned that they're really quick and you can't really lock the doors on reaction, they'll run right through them. Next is Brackens. Brackens are honestly the main reason you need a terminal guy, because otherwise they'll just pick everyone off. They're a pretty small dot too, and they're not very fast, so you might confuse them for a small threat, but the way they move is really distinct. You'll notice them trying to sneak around your team, and once they get behind them, they'll charge. If you can't tell it's a Bracken just from the way it's lurking and you don't call it to your team, then you need to make sure you yell for them to turn around before they get their next snap. Pay attention to the direction that the Bracken retreats to and remind your team not to stare, otherwise this will happen. The ceiling bug is a really small dot too, but you need to call them out. You can tell it's a ceiling bug because it just won't move, so let your teammates know in advance and they can kill it or avoid it. The last monster you'll have to figure out is the spider. They're a medium-sized circle, and the main sign of the spider is if they're just perfectly still. Once a spider sets up all their webs, they won't move for the rest of the run as long as no one touches or breaks the web. Heads up, you can't actually see the webs on the map, so listen if your team is calling for webs and make sure the spider's not in their path. Sometimes they like to hang out above doorways, and if your teammate walks into them, they're as good as dead. Now, there's 3 more main threats, but they're all really obvious. First up of those is the Coilheads. They run really fast when no one's looking, and actually their patrolling looks kind of similar to Thumpers when they haven't spotted anybody. You'll know it's a Coilhead though because if you'll just see your teammates staring at an enemy terrified and both of them not moving, that means it's a Coilhead. If you're dealing with a Coilhead, the way you can counter him is by getting your teammate to walk backwards into a room that you can seal the door to, and you can trap Coilheads inside of these. As long as no one trips the breaker or takes the apparatus, the coils will stay stuck forever. This goes for any monster, but it's easiest to do with coils. A Jester is pretty easy to spot too because it'll just follow your team around, keeping a small distance, and then it'll randomly stop moving. If you see it stop moving, there's about 20 seconds before it pops and just kills everybody. So you have to guide everyone out of the facility as fast as you can. If you have Giga Chad teammates, you can get them to counter the Jester the exact same way as Coilheads by trapping them in secure doors. But I mean, it's a lot riskier to be honest. Probably just get out. The little girl is a small circle that appears and disappears. I don't have any footage of her circle, but you can see it even if the girl isn't coming for you specifically. If you see a girl charging your teammates, guide them to the exit, or just give them a route that isn't a dead end and they can outrun or haunt. That's pretty much all the basics of running the terminal. Now I'll show you some of the more advanced things and some tricks with the teleporter. Mansion layouts, which are visible from the big entrance room, will never have secure doors in them, so Terminal Guy isn't able to help at all with reducing the amount of monsters. This arguably makes it more important to have a Terminal Guy because you'll need to warn your team of everything going on and get them in and out as fast as possible. Another thing to know about secure doors is that when your team takes the apparatus, all doors will be opened and they can't be closed again. Same goes for if someone turns off breaker switches. If you have Coilheads, Jesters, or really just anything trapped behind doors, let your team know that they're gonna have to make a dash to the exit, or sometimes if you trapped a lot of monsters, it's better to just leave the apparatus. Oh, I wanted to mention the monsters outside. If your team is coming back and you know there's dogs, tell them and then turn off your radio. Dogs can hear your voice through their radio, so don't talk to them. Just give them a warning and then stay silent. It's also not a bad idea to just buy one walkie-talkie since it's the cheapest item, and that'll make a drop pod spawn. The ice cream music from the pod actually pulls all dogs away for like 30 seconds or something like that, and it gives your team a lot of leeway if they're trying to get back. This is mainly useful if there's like worms and dogs and giants. Basically, if there's just giants and worms outside with the dogs, your team will kind of be screwed because you have to run from the worms and run from the giants, but then the dogs will kill you. So if you just call in the drop pod, you take dogs out of the equation. Speaking of worms, if you see a worm under your teammate, tell them to run. They detect you no matter what, even if you're standing still, so you have to get away from where you were when they first detected you. Even if there's dogs that they have to juke, it's better to avoid the worm and strafe the dogs than to have all your loot get eaten by the worm. And what I usually like to do is transmit worms close, dogs close, or whatever I see close to the ship. Last is the giants. They have a long animation of picking up and eating your teammates. You should always have a stun grenade in your hotbar as the terminal guy, so if someone's getting eaten right outside the ship, you can just throw a grenade and make the giant drop them. You can also counter them with the teleporter, which is the last thing I'll go over since it's also a big part of being the terminal guy. The teleport is fast enough that if you press the button when your teammate gets grabbed, you can actually get them back to the ship before they get eaten, and their loot will all just drop on the floor instead of getting eaten. The teleporter is pretty nice to have, but you shouldn't use it super often. It's essentially the same as killing your teammate because they get put back to the ship without any items. The only times you should teleport someone is if they're dead, they have a leech on their head, they're being eaten by a giant, or if they're hopelessly surrounded by monsters. Also, probably not a bad idea if they're in too deep when a jester is about to pop. Well, that's pretty much everything there is to being the terminal player. Pro tip, if you want to give your teammates some tunes, they can hear the boombox through the radio. Super tactical. I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I've been enjoying the game. If this video helped you out, I'd appreciate a sub, like if you liked, and I'll see you in the next one.